Alright guys, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to add the sign out button. You can see underneath the chat list we have the space for the sign out button, but we don't actually have the button there. It's going to be a good time to go ahead and add that. So inside of your dashboard component folder, right click on it and go ahead and add a styles.js file. And go to the code in the description and find the styles.js file for the dashboard. Copy that file, copy all the contents in it, and then paste it into here. And we'll click save, and you can see it only has one class, which is the sign out button, and it has the styles for that sign out button. So once you have that, we'll just need a quick couple of imports so that we can start working with Material UI and our styles. So up here above Firebase, go ahead and import both button and with styles from @material-ui/core, and we'll also import our styles.js file. So styles, import styles from /styles. Now we have those, but we still need to do our with styles stuff down here. So go ahead and cut dashboard, and then we'll go ahead and say export default with styles, and then dashboard component. Now we're ready to start working with it. So we want to go to this parent div here that we're returning and rendering. We want to go inside of that parent div, but underneath the chat list component, and with a capital B, we want to create a button tag. And we will do an onClick function, which we will call this.signout whenever we click on the button. The text for the button will simply be sign out. And then we also want to add a class, but we need to go up here inside of the render function above return and destructure classes. So go ahead and say const classes is equal to this.props. Now we have access to that classes variable. So inside of your opening button tag, let's go ahead and say class name is equal to classes.signoutBTN. All right, so we do not have this sign out function yet. So let's go ahead and create that. So sign out, all we're gonna say is firebase.auth.signout. And let's watch what happens when I save this. Let's watch what happens when I click this sign out button. As you can see, when I clicked that sign out button, it actually not only signed us out, but it also redirected us to this login page. So why did it do that? Let's remember what we did down here. When we mount the component, we're actually listening for auth state changed. We're actually listening. So whenever the auth state changes for a user, we're going to run all of this code every single time. So in this case, when we signed out, user is now undefined or null, and we're saying if not user, go ahead and redirect us to the login page. So that is really convenient for us. It's kind of a reactive style. All right, so let's move on to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in as zach@portexe.com. And what the goal of today's video is going to be is to be able to click on this chat and then display the chat over here so that we can see all of the messages. So let's go ahead and get started with that task. Step one is going to be to create our chat view component. So let's start by doing that. In your source folder, create a new folder called chat view. And inside of there, let's go ahead and create two files, a styles.js file and a chatview.js file. Let's go ahead and I want you to go inside of the code in the link in the description, and I want you to find the chat view component, and I want you to grab the styles.js content inside of there, go ahead and paste that inside of this file and save. Once you have that, we'll go ahead and move on to actually creating our boilerplate code for our chat view. So for the chat view, we're only really going to do 3 imports. We're going to import React, we're going to import the styles file, and we're going to import with styles. And then below this, let's go ahead and create a class that we'll call chat view component, which extends react.component. And below that, let's go ahead and export default with styles, and the chat view component. Now we have our boilerplate set up, but you know we have to have a render function. So let's go ahead and create the render function. Go ahead and destructure the classes while we're up here. Const classes is equal to this.props. And then for now, we'll just return a div with hello from chat view component. Let's go ahead and add a class to this div really quick. We'll say class name is equal to we'll say classes dot content. Whoops, content. Let's go ahead and put this inside of the dashboard so that we can at least see that it's working as we expect it to. So go over to your dashboard and let's import the class or the component. So import chat view component from, that's going to be /chat view /chat view. Looks like I went into the wrong folder. Chat view /chat view. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and underneath the chat list component, go ahead and put in our chat view component. So opening tag, chat view component with a closing tag, and save it. And let's see. Now you can see over here that we have our component inside. So we are actually going to want to display this conditionally. The only time we're not going to want this entire chat view component to show is when we're showing the new chat form. And so even in the beginning, when we don't have any chats selected, we want to go ahead and just have this thing visible because we're going to load content dynamically inside of it anyway. So we won't display anything inside of this component if you haven't selected a chat, but we really only want this component to disappear if the new chat form visible piece of state is set to true. So we want to render this conditionally. So cut this and then put two opening and closing bracket, or put an opening and closing bracket, and then inside of here we're going to say this.state.new chat form visible, and if it is visible we'll go ahead and return null, but otherwise we'll go ahead and render our component out. So when we save this, you can see that it's still there because our new chat component is, our new chat form visible is currently by default set to false. So what sort of props do we want to pass to this chat view component? Well, we're definitely going to want the user. So let's go ahead and pass the user into here and say this.state.email will be the user. And we're also going to want to pass the current chat. So we're going to say the chat is equal to this.state.chats, and then the index is actually going to be this.state.selected chat. So if I go up here, the selected chat is null by default. And we are going to want to set selected chat to be the index of the current chat we're on inside of this chats array. So selected chat will always be a number that represents the index of which chat we have selected inside of this array. But as you can see, inside of the dashboard component, inside of select chat, we're not actually setting the selected chat. We need to go ahead and set that. So let's come in here and remove this console log statement and go ahead and set the state. So this.set state, and then in here the state that we want to update is selected chat, and we want to set that equal to the chat index that we get as the argument here. But if you remember, we're actually not inside of the chat list component. We're let's see, where's the chat list component? Inside of the chat list component, we're not actually calling anything, we're just logging. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to pass this select chat function into the chat list component, which we're already doing. And then when we select a chat inside of here, instead of just logging, we need to go ahead and say this.props.selected chat function index. So now we're actually calling the parent function with the index. So in theory, what we should do, I'm going to actually come in here and I'll go ahead and just to make sure that this is working for now, I will go ahead and log the index. So I'll say index and chat index. That way we can just make sure that this is working when I select a chat, and I need to put a comma here, save. And when I open up my console, let's go ahead and make this tall so you guys can see it. When I select this chat, we get a huge error. Let's look at it. It says this.props.selected function is not a function. Selected chat function is not a function. So it must be selected chat fn. I see. It's supposed to be select chat function, not selected chat function. So let's come back in here to the chat list component and get rid of this ed here. Save. And let's see what happens when I click this. Cool. So now you can see that it's passing it to the dashboard component. Now we know that the state is currently being set with whatever chat you click on inside of the chat list component. And as you notice, you can actually tell that the state is updating because now it's showing that this particular chat list item is currently selected. So we know that we're doing that inside of the chat list. We're giving a selected, let's see, list item selected if this.props.selected chat index is equal to index. So we know that that is coming from, let's see, it's coming from right here, which is actually part of the dashboard state. So we know that it's actually updated correctly. So I'm going to get rid of this console statement here, and let's go ahead and move into the chat view component and start writing the HTML for it. So we're going to want to actually render conditionally here. So I'm going to actually cut this return statement out. The reason why we're going to want to render conditionally here is because in the dashboard component, we are passing in a, let's see, we're using an index as the reference. So we're saying this.state.chats, this.state.selected chat. Now, by default, selected chat is null. So there's going to be a point in time where this is just completely undefined. So we're going to have to handle that case where it's undefined. Otherwise, we're going to get errors. So we're going to go ahead and put an if else statement in here. If this.props. In fact, let's just go ahead and destructure this out as well. So let's put a comma after classes that says chat. We'll go ahead and pull chat out of this.props as well. And we'll say if chat is equal to undefined, then we will return a main tag with the class name equal to classes.content, and the tag will just simply be empty. That way there's nothing being displayed over here. Otherwise, if it's not undefined, we'll actually start returning actual stuff. So let's go ahead and create a main tag, and then again, let's put the classes inside of, or the class name inside of the main tag. All right, and let's go ahead and start putting stuff in here. So what we actually, let's wrap this inside of a parent container because we're going to want a toolbar up here that says who you're chatting with. So let's create a parent div here, and then we'll create another div for that toolbar, and then underneath that we'll put the main tag we just created. So inside of this main tag, we'll go ahead and start with this, and then we'll move into the toolbar in just a second. So inside of here, we want to put some JavaScript, and we're going to use the map function to basically create from an array of chats, an array of messages inside of the chat. We're going to create divs of those. So let's say this.props.chat. We already have chat destructured. So chat.messages.map, and we want to use both the current message and the index. And let's go ahead and start returning some stuff. So we're going to want to return a div for each and every single one of the messages. And since we're returning many, we have to put a key because React wants us to. So the key we'll just simply set to index. And we're going to give it a class name. And this is where it gets a little interesting because we want to give it a class name conditionally. If the message belongs to you, the person that's currently logged in, if you're the one that sent that message, that particular message, we want it to display on the left. And if your friend sent the message, we want it to display on the right. So we are going to need a conditional class here. So if message.sender is equal to, let's destructure user out. Let's destructure user. So we'll say user from this.props as well. So if message.sender is equal to user, so in other words, if you are the one that sent this particular message that we're on, then we want to go ahead and add the class classes.userSent. Okay? Otherwise, we know that it was the friend that sent it, and we can add the class classes.friendSent. So now we are conditionally adding a class based upon whether or not you sent it or your friend sent the message. So inside of here, the text that we want inside of this div is simply the message.message. So the current message we're on .message, which is just the text inside of the message. So let's go ahead and save, and we get an error. Let's go ahead and address this. So the problem in this case is that we have a div here, but we're not returning it. We need to actually put this inside of a return statement. So let's create a return statement, and save it and then see what happens here. So when I click on this message, you can see now that "Hey man" was sent by you, the person that was logged in, and then your friend responded with, "Hey, just got your message, how are you?" So I'm gonna go ahead and shrink this down so that it looks a little bit cleaner and bring this over a bit so that it's not so tied up. But you can see now that the messages are on the side that makes most logical sense to the person using this app. So that's great and all, but when you're here, even though you have this over here, you have this selected, you can tell that this one's gray, so you know this is the chat you're on. It would still be nice to have a toolbar up here that says your conversation with and the username you're having a conversation with. So inside of this open and closing div tag up here above the main tag, let's go ahead and create a toolbar. And we'll simply add a class here, and the class is going to be classes.chatHeader. So class name is equal to classes.chatHeader, and we want to add text inside of here, and it's going to say your conversation with, and then we're going to use some JavaScript to pull the user out that you're having a conversation with. And the easiest way to do that is kind of what we did with how we're displaying the username here, which is we're going to say chat.users, and we're going to filter. So we're going to filter for each user. We want the user that is not equal to user, which is, when I say user, it's this user variable that we're pulling out of this.props. So we're returning an array with one item in it. Filter returns an array, and we're returning an array with a single item in it because there's only two items in this array, you and your friend. And we want the user that's not equal to you, which would literally be your friend. And since we know that we're going to be getting a single user back, we can go ahead and access the 0 item, which will be the friend's name. Let's save and look at what happens here when I click on this. You can see now at the top, we have a toolbar that says your conversation with Bob at portexe.com. So I went into my Firebase dashboard and I went ahead and added a couple of messages so that it would be tall enough to where it would force me to scroll down in order to see the bottom of the messages. So the very next step that we want to do is when I click on a message, so if I refresh here, if I click on this message or if I receive a new message, I want to scroll automatically all the way down to the latest, to the bottom essentially, because that's how most chat apps work, and also it's very convenient for the user. So what we are going to do is we're going to implement one function that essentially gets called twice, or not really twice, but it gets called inside of two different functions. Let me not confuse you. So we want to use the React hooks that I was talking about earlier. So we're going to use component did mount. So whenever the component is mounted, we're going to do whatever's inside of here. We're going to say const container is equal to document.get element by ID. And we're going to create an ID here called chat view -container. Now we don't actually have this ID yet. We need to go ahead and add it. So I'm going to copy this chat view container, and we want to add this to this main tag right here. We want to go ahead and add an ID. So ID is equal to chat view container. You want to add that to here. And we're gonna save, but we also want to go ahead and add it here. Let's just go ahead and add the ID here as well, since it's essentially the same thing. So now that we have that, we have this container variable. What we want to do with it is we want to say if container. So if the container exists, then we want to use a function. So container.scrollTo. It's built into JavaScript. We want to scroll 0 and then container.scrollHeight, which is going to scroll all the way down to the height of the container. So let's go ahead and save this. And when I click on it, it doesn't do it. And see what's happening here is this only gets called whenever the component is mounted. We want it to get called every single time there's an update, every time the component updates. So I'm actually going to change this from component did mount to component did update and save it. And now I'm going to click on it, and you can see now that it actually scrolls automatically. That is going to be a really great feature for the users. So now we have the ability to see the list of chats here on the side that you're associated with, and we also have the ability to click on that and see all of the messages for that chat. What we do not have yet is the ability to send chat messages, which is what the focus of the next video is going to be on. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.